Hello students, and welcome to Online Nutrition Science. Module 1 is titled Introduction to Nutrition. Obviously, we need food to survive and the nutrients found in those foods for energy, maintenance, and repair of cells in the body. We cannot begin our studies this semester without knowing a sound definition of the term nutrition. Nutrition is the study of nutrients and how our bodies use them. So we will be taking a closer look at the nutrients our body needs to maintain a general state of health, both macro and micronutrients in our foods, how our body absorbs and uses these nutrients, and possible outcomes if we under or overconsume certain nutrients. In the United States in particular, overconsumption is a growing problem. Changes in consumer eating trends, which we will discuss in the coming slides, combined with decreased activity levels, have led to an overweight nation with the health problems that go along with it. Most American families are spending more money on processed foods, refined grains, and sweets rather than healthier fruits, vegetables, whole grains, fish, poultry, and low-fat dairy products. Because of these trends, we are seeing more cases of obesity and type 2 diabetes, not only in adults, but unfortunately in children as well. You may have heard the words food and nutrients used interchangeably. However, food is what we consume, or one of our basic human needs for survival. Nutrients are the life-sustaining substances in food. Let's use a banana for an example. Some of the nutrients in a banana are vitamin C, potassium, dietary fiber, and copper. In this class, we will focus on nutrients and how the body uses these nutrients in the foods we consume. The first half of this course, we will take a look at the 6 classes of nutrients, of which food in our bodies are made. Each of these nutrients have at least one function in the body. These nutrients are carbohydrates or sugars, lipids, which are the fats, proteins, vitamins, minerals, and finally, water. Most people don't think of water as a nutrient, but it is certainly one of the most important, since 50 to 70% of our bodies, depending on our age and sex, are composed of water. How does our body use nutrients? Our bodies use the 6 classes for energy, growth and development, and regulation of body processes. The nutrients we consume are also important for cells to carry out metabolism, which is the total of all chemical processes that occur in the body's living cells. While on the topic of nutrients, what are essential nutrients? Those are the nutrients that the body must receive from food because our bodies can either not build the nutrient from what we receive in foods, or our bodies do not make them in sufficient quantities. For instance, our bodies can synthesize all the alanine, aspartic acid, and histidine we need. However, folic acid is a nutrient we cannot synthesize, so we must get it from food or supplements. So how can we determine whether a nutrient is essential? There are 3 main ways. The first way is that the nutrient, when it is absent from our diet, there's some type of deficiency disease that occurs. For example, in the picture on the slide, you can see the effects from lack of vitamin B1, or thiamine. A deficiency can cause the disease beriberi, mainly in countries where polished rice is a staple in the diet. Polishing rice removes the husk from the rice grain, which is where the thiamine is found. Beriberi causes pain, weakness, weight loss, walking difficulties, and mental disturbances in the afflicted person. Another characteristic of an essential nutrient is that the resulting disease due to the missing nutrient can be corrected when the nutrient is reintroduced into the diet. In the case of beriberi, the reintroduction of thiamine through supplements or diet can alleviate the symptoms. Finally, if scientists can identify the nutrient's specific role in the body, then an explanation can be made for the signs and symptoms of disease when the nutrient was missing from the diet. Nutrients can also be classified as either micro or macronutrients. The macronutrients in our diets are the carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, and are required in large amounts on a daily basis. Micronutrients such as vitamins and minerals are needed in much smaller amounts. Most foods we consume provide macronutrients in grams and the micronutrients in milligrams, as you can see on this food label example. The textbook mentions phytochemicals in this particular chapter, which are not considered nutrients, but certainly are considered to have health benefits. Phytochemicals are made by plants and are thought to have antioxidant activity, reducing the risk of cancer, nerve diseases, and other chronic illnesses. Berries such as blueberries, raspberries, and other brightly colored red, purple, and blueberries contain pigment compounds called anthocyanins, part of the flavonoid family of polyphenol phytochemicals. These are really helpful to consume. As previously mentioned, the foods we consume consist of the nutrients used as fuel or energy for cells. So let's talk about the terminology used to measure the energy in a food. A calorie with a lowercase c is the amount of heat needed to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water 1 degree Celsius. Since this is such a small number, we instead report the energy in food in 1,000 calorie units called kilocalories, or calories with a capital C. This is the heat energy needed to raise the temperature of 1,000 grams of water 1 degree Celsius. For example, instead of reporting that a medium-sized banana has 100,000 kilocalories, we simply say it has 100 calories. So how do scientists determine how many calories are in a food? Calorie content is determined by direct calorimetry in a device called a bomb calorimeter. A portion of a food is placed into the calorimeter bomb, which, as you see in the picture, is a chamber surrounded by water. The food is incinerated in the bomb chamber, and as heat is released from the food, the water surrounding the bomb is heated. This water temperature is measured, and scientists use the data to determine the calorie content of a food. So how could you determine the total number of calories in a food product you plan to consume? If we know the amount of carbohydrate, protein, and fat in the food, then we can figure this out through a simple calculation. First, you must know that carbohydrates and proteins provide approximately 4 kilocalories per gram, while fat contributes about 9 kilocalories per gram. If you consume alcohol, although non-nutritive, be aware that it does contribute about 7 kilocalories per gram, hence people having beer guts, if you've ever heard that term. Let's look at an example on the following slide for calculating total calories in a food product based on the 3 macronutrients we have discussed. Let's use the example of this Nature Valley Oats and Honey granola bar and figure out how many kilocalories are provided by each nutrient per serving. In this case, the nutrition facts label states that 2 bars are considered 1 serving. If 1 serving consists of 29 grams of carbohydrate, 7 grams of fat, and 3 grams of protein, what are the total calories in this 2-bar serving? To determine the calories in 1 serving or 2 bars of granola bars, the 29 grams of carbohydrate in the bars is multiplied by the number of calories contributed by carbs per gram, which is 4. The same is done for both fat and protein. Once these numbers are calculated, they are added together to get 191 total calories per serving. And you can see I've listed these numbers in red on the slide. Now, just to verify the number we obtained, we can look at the nutrition facts panel to see the actual numbers. As you see, it shows 190 calories and not 191 calories per serving. According to the FDA labeling regulations on these products, calories may be rounded on labels so that a total calorie value greater than 50 may be expressed to the nearest 10 calorie increment. To be blunt, we have an obesity problem in the United States, and this has not gone unnoticed by our nation's public health officials. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, medical costs associated with obesity in the U.S. were estimated to be $147 billion in 2008. Obesity is a tough issue to address since it results from a combination of factors, including genetics and family history, and an individual's personal lifestyle choices. Genetics alone cannot be blamed for obesity issues since genetic changes in human populations occur at an incredibly slow pace. However, researchers in a relatively new field of study called nutritional genomics are working to identify genetic variations that explain why some individuals respond differently to nutrients in foods. To date, multiple studies have identified variations in several genes that may increase hunger in food intake, thereby contributing to obesity. An individual's lifestyle choices may certainly lead to weight gain or obesity. Choosing high-fat foods over lower-fat foods over a long period of time not only may lead to weight gain, but increases the risk of developing serious health conditions, such as heart disease, cancer, and type 2 diabetes. Obesity is certainly considered a risk factor for many of these chronic diseases. So, what steps are being taken in the United States to educate citizens on obesity prevention and other chronic health problems? In 2011, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services issued Healthy People 2020, a report focusing on health and disease promotion. Within the report, there are specific nutrition-related objectives. To read more about these objectives, please explore the link provided in your textbook on page 11 or the link I provided in the Beyond the Book section of Module 1. Since we are concerned about obesity in our nation, let's discuss the factors that influence our eating habits. There are many factors that influence our food choices, anything from family ethnic backgrounds to food availability to the season of your life. As a child, you are influenced by your family since your food choices are generally made for you. As you age and as you gain more control over your diet, food preferences and choices often expand. For many, religious and cultural influences play a role in food choice. Even in the U.S., areas called food deserts exist, usually in urban or rural areas where access to healthy and affordable food is limited. Fast food or convenience stores may be the only option for some. All of the factors seen on this slide play a role in eating habits of Americans, and this is also in your textbook, so you can look at this closer there if you'd like. Before we can move on to future chapters in our book, we must grasp a few key nutrition concepts. First, understand that foods are mixtures of nutrients and that all foods have some type of nutritional value. Of course, there are foods that are not as good for us as others. So which foods should we focus on consuming? Nutrient-dense foods are those that provide a significant number of vitamin and minerals, lean protein, and healthy fats with a low total calorie count. For example, the leafy green kale that is, it's not on this picture in particular, but leafy green kale is loaded with vitamins, minerals, fiber, and antioxidants, and a 100-gram portion contributes only 50 calories. On the contrary, a 100-gram portion of plain salted potato chips provides very few healthy nutrients while contributing a whopping 550 calories. Another concept important to nutrition is energy density. Energy density is the amount of energy or calories a food provides per gram of the food. As you can see in this picture, a 400-calorie serving of strawberries and a 400-calorie donut provide the same number of calories. The weight of the donut is about 100 grams, while about 8 medium strawberries also weigh 100 grams. Since water supplies no energy and water makes up a large portion of the strawberries, the energy these provide will be much lower. In this case, the donut is more energy dense, but by far is less nutrient dense. Moving on, many of the foods we consume are considered empty calorie foods. These are the foods that supply a high number of calories without providing a sufficient number of micronutrients. The more of these foods you consume, the less room in the diet for nutritious foods. Think those yummy foods like chips, candy, cupcakes, or any other foods with added sugar. Those are the empty calorie type foods. Alcoholic beverages are also considered empty calorie. So, how can we ensure that our diet is nutritionally adequate? Three important principles to keep in mind are variety, moderation, and balance. Eating a variety of foods means eating several foods from each food group seen on the My Plate graphic on this slide: the fruits, grains, vegetables, proteins, and dairy groups. We will discuss My Plate in the coming chapters. In addition to choosing a variety of foods, the concept of moderation should also be incorporated. This means consuming foods in a reasonable amount. All-you-can-eat buffet-style restaurants and most restaurants in general serve portions that are too large for the average person. You can receive ample nutrients from quality foods without overeating. The final concept to keep in mind is the one of balance, which means balancing physical activity and calorie intake so that a healthy weight is maintained. No food contains all the nutrients we need, but a well-rounded diet of minimally processed whole foods is the best way to get the nutrients we need. As our text mentions, the more processed a food, the more nutrients that have likely been lost to the processing. However, for some people that have chronic health conditions or those who are elderly, taking a dietary supplement may be advised. These supplements increase a person's intake of a nutrient by concentrating it in forms such as pill or powder. In the U.S., the Dietary Supplement and Health Education Act of 1994 allows supplement manufacturers to classify supplements as foods. However, keep in mind that dietary supplements such as the vitamins you purchase at the store are not strictly regulated by the FDA. In fact, it is only if action is required against a supplement manufacturer that the FDA will step in. In addition, it should be made known that supplements are not cure-alls. In other words, these should not be used in place of whole foods as a source of nutrients. The next concept to understand when studying nutrition is that malnutrition, or what occurs when the body is not nourished properly, can be caused by both under and overnutrition. Generally, when you hear the term malnourished, you may immediately think of people who are starving or have little access to food. However, overnutrition or consuming too many calories over time may lead to obesity. Sadly, this is not only a developed nation problem, but is now affecting developing nations. China, for instance, now has over 3,000 Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurants, with one new KFC restaurant opening almost daily. A growing number of households in China now have televisions, personal vehicles, and other electronics that are causing decreasing physical activity and increasing weight gain. So overnutrition is now becoming a global problem. The last concept to keep in mind is that nutrition information is dynamic and is constantly evolving. It's certainly not an exact science, especially since each person responds differently to the nutrients they consume. As new research data is released, nutrition recommendations are modified and updated, and you probably see things changing on commercials or anything you hear on the radio. It's constantly being put into our faces. Nutrition information changes all the time. So let's recap the points we covered in Chapter 1. Nutrition is the study of nutrients and how our bodies use them. There are 6 classes of nutrients: the macronutrients, carbs, proteins, and fats; the micronutrients, vitamins and minerals; and don't forget water. It supplies no energy, but we must have it to survive. We learned that a calorie is the currency or a measure of energy that our body consumes and uses. We now understand that our diet matters. Poor nutritional choices can lead to not only obesity, but chronic conditions associated with it. In this chapter, we discuss the factors that influence what we eat and several key nutrition concepts that must be understood prior to studying nutrition. If you have any questions about any of the concepts in Chapter 1, please feel free to post in my virtual office in the discussion board section of the course website, or send an email directly to me.